The meteoric rise to the pinnacle of superstardom saw Game Freak's Pokémon come out of nowhere in 1996 to become basically the biggest thing on the planet a mere couple of years later. You could easily make the case that it only grew from there as well, with 9 mainline generations at time of writing, and more spin-offs than virtually any other game franchise. An anime with many seasons and tons of feature lengths, reams of manga, as well as trading cards that's all been going for almost as long as the video games have. God, what else? Mobile games like Pokemon Go that's almost 10 years old at this point and still going strong. Tons of toys like plushies, action figures, a theme park for God's sake. You get the picture. Pikachu and his buddies have something of a media juggernaut going, and it still sort of blows my mind a little bit that all of this started with a humble Game Boy game. Anyway, it's only now I realise, despite it being a property so quintessential to what the Game Boy is, I've yet to actually review a Pokemon game, save a couple of Emerald ROM hacks I played through a bit ago. As I mentioned, there are many spin-off video games with varying degrees of link to the main series. Some are full-on side quests, whereas some kind of skirt the universe a bit, utilising the license but not much else. The first such title was Pocket Monsters Stadium, which saw a Japanese release on the N64 in August of 1998, and is actually not the game you know as Pokemon Stadium. I wasn't aware of this until just now, but what we know as Stadium is actually Pocket Monsters Stadium 2, a sequel. That's a tangent for somebody else to explore though. Here we're looking at only the third ever non-main series title, which launched in Japan around a week after Pikachu Genki Dechu, the Japanese name for that virtual pet thing, Hey You Pikachu. A video game based on the TCG was a no-brainer really, as in the late 90s towards the turn of the century, the card game was almost as popular as the Game Boy games themselves. Even I collected them despite never having any interest in things like that before, or since. Only actually playing the deck builder a small handful of times, it was something that naturally lent itself to the collecting side of things, seeing as how that was a concept already thoroughly baked into Pokemon anyway. God, I wish I still had them based on how much the original series goes for now, but that's another story. As card games go, the rules are actually fairly straightforward. You build a deck of 60 cards, made up of basic Pokemon, their evolutions, energy cards used to power up moves, and trainer cards that do a variety of things. There are many ways to compose your deck, it's really up to you to put whatever combination of cards in there. Much like the game, you can have up to 6 monsters in play, 1 in the currently active slot, and up to 5 on the bench. Each Pokemon has 1 or 2 moves that they can do, and they all require a certain number of energy cards to be attached to the Pokemon in order to utilize the moves. Only 1 energy card can be attached to a monster per turn, and quite often you'll need to attach specific types of energy. For example, a grass monster will probably require grass energy. Not always, but a lot of the time. The symbols next to the move name tell you what you'll need. Should a move have a star next to it instead, then you can add whatever energy you like. More powerful moves often require more energy, therefore more turns to charge up, which gives the opponent more time to get rid of the stronger Pokemon. Typings are present here as normal, and they have strengths and weaknesses akin to what you'll find in Red and Blue, but there are fewer different types. You get your starting triumvirate of grass, fire and water of course, as well as a further trio of electric, fighting and psychic. These 6 sort of absorbed some of the others. For example, what would be ground or rock type usually will probably now be fighting. Ghost or dark will find themselves in the psychic class now, and so on. To complement this, you have got the normal type as well, which, while they don't often have any elemental bonuses, do come with other benefits such as being able to use any energy card and even the double colorless energy one. The typical typologies don't necessarily dictate super effectiveness here. Just because a Pokemon is a fire type doesn't guarantee that it'll be weak to water. Each Pokemon has its own elemental weakness, shown on the bottom of the card, and should you be able to attack it using a move of that element, it'll take double damage. Contrastingly, if a card has a resistance to something, it'll negate a flat 30 damage done to it. At the start of the game, both players place a certain number of prizes, simply the top cards from your deck. This depends on the type of match. Sometimes you'll play for 2 prizes, sometimes up to 6, and defeating an opponent's Pokemon will let you choose one of them, with the card going into your hand. Should you manage to claim all your prizes, you win the game. That's one win condition. Once the prizes are placed, you each draw the next 7 cards. To progress from here, you'll need to have at least one basic level Pokemon in your hand. Put one in play, then bench the rest. The other win condition comes when your opponent no longer has any basic level Pokemon in play, so if you can quickly wipe out their lead when they don't yet have anything on the bench, you'll win even if there are prizes left to claim. This is where the deck building strategy comes in. Do you put quite a few basics in there to ensure you have a team, or cut back on them in favour for more powerful evolutions and trainer cards? If you draw an evolution card at any time, you can evolve its corresponding basic Pokemon as long as it's in play, i.e. up front or on the bench, and has been for at least one turn. You can't evolve something on the same turn you place it. Likewise, you can only place one energy card per turn, but you can, however, start loading up benched Pokemon with energy so that they can come into battle ready to fire. There's plenty more nuance to the gameplay, but I'll let you discover all that yourself. There's a pretty comprehensive tutorial and help manuals in-game to teach you anyway. When you win matches, or sometimes through emails, you'll receive these booster packs, which give you randomly drawn new cards to augment your decks with. Like Generation 1, you have 8 different elemental gyms to challenge, and so we'll need to build several different types of decks that favour those type advantages. Fortunately, you can store the blueprints of any deck in the computers so that they can easily be recalled, tweaked, or whatever. Within each gym, there are your scrub trainers who you can battle as many times as you want to grind for those booster packs. Then, when you think you're ready, challenge the gym leader. There's a pretty thin narrative, even by Pokemon standards, that ties everything together, but it's serviceable enough as a framework for the card battles. There is an element of luck that pervades these contests, which is reflective of the card game itself. Obviously, the order in which your cards are drawn is chance-based. Sometimes the evolutions and correct energy cards will seemingly be magnetized into your hand, other times you're scraping around just hoping to get something good. You can weight this by compiling your deck differently, but it's always still down to chance. Things like status effects and the recovery therefrom is typically decided by a coin toss, again like in the game, and while you might read some fan reviews saying that this is weighted in the CPU's favour, I can't find any evidence of this, so I'm going to put that down to player bitterness. Graphically, it's admirable that the overall look is not just copy-pasted from Red and Blue, even the font is different. But then it's not Game Freak who developed this, rather our trusty Bumblebee lovers Hudson, so you know it's in good hands. The overworld is fairly simple, but all of the cards are drawn beautifully and really do resemble the original series of cards. This review would not be complete without giving a special recognition to the outrageously good soundtrack too. Pokemon games have always had pretty iconic music, but instances are few and far between where the compositional quality across the whole OST are as clever and broad-ranging as this one is. The main battle theme as well as the boss fights have much longer songs than you typically find in Game Boy games. 4+ minutes of track length for the song you'll hear most in-game, which is incredible when you consider some of the battles can easily last 20 minutes. You don't want to have a 1-minute loop go around for that long. It'll drive you to tears no matter how good it is. Genuinely one of the best soundtracks in either of the first 2 Game Boy libraries. Utilizing the first 3 sets of the TCG, Generation 1 base set, Jungle, and Fossil, you have over 200 cards to find, and of course there's a handy dex to let you know what you've collected. You can even play the game with collection in mind if you want to do that. Each one of those cards has been rendered in lovely pixel art that, like I say, is as close to perfect as you're gonna get from an 8-bit screen, really capturing the physical card's essence. As card games go, it's certainly accessible, with a pretty intuitive rule set that never strays into the obtuse or unnecessarily complex. Enemy AI is clever enough to represent real-life players of varying skill levels. The bosses are definitely harder, and it's not just because of their cards. That's something that often goes unappreciated, just how difficult it is to program that sort of thing. Some Pokemon fans will play the mainline series and nothing else, and a lot of the time you can't fault that mentality. This, however, is an absolute must for any fan, even if you don't care about card games. Phenomenal.